أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا أيحسب أن لم يره أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة والذين كفروا بآياتنا هم أصحاب المشأمة عليهم نار مؤصدة. جزاكم الله خير.
I'll start my conversation talking about the way we make our mind to think. It's all in our hand. Now, we as humans operate on our limitations. It's just a preamble before we move to actual problem-solving technique. You all of them have a paper and a pen, and we are going to do an exercise, live exercise, in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, it's a very simple. Once done, you will never ever forget. Yeah. Now, what is our limitation, or what are our limitations? Can I see or look at 2 different directions at the same time? No, nobody can. Can I walk in 2 different directions at the same time? Nobody can. Can I breathe when I am swallowing? Nobody can. Because there is a flap. You either can swallow or you can breathe. Now, we are designed that way. But when it comes to thinking, we don't use our mind in the same way. We believe that our mind can walk both ways, or look at both ways. So that is the first principle, that we do not tend to use our mind in the same principle as what it is designed to do. Yeah? Second thing, which I want to bear in mind before we go on problem solving. Brain, which is a physical entity, is our friend. Brain supports our body. It is the physical entity that actually carries all the chemicals and the nerves and everything. It is absolutely essential for our sustainability. When it comes to mind, it is not always our friend. It's an unknown entity. It very often goes out of control. A simple example is, we use every part, every organ of our body more than 100%, more than it is designed for. We end in destroying our joints, Our heart starts failing, but we still want it to work for us. Why? We just keep on pushing our system to the maximum. When it comes to brain, when it comes to mind in particular, how much percentage do we use of it? How much percentage do you think we use our mind in this lifetime? Few percent. Because mind doesn't allow you to use it more than that. It's a very, very controlling entity. It creates fear. It throws us into the situations where we feel that we are trapped, but actually we are not trapped. It is just a matter of perception. Now, with these two thoughts, we will start problem-solving technique. Now, does anybody want to bring a problem which we can resolve? I can give a number of examples, but I don't want to go into an example. I want somebody to bring a problem which we solve or try to resolve. Give it a go. Anybody wants to come with a problem? Come on, yes sir.
How do we get children to be obedient?
Huh?
How do we get our children to be obedient to the parents?
Yes, that's another issue. Thank you very much. Once we finish the problem solving, we will, how we can do our children. Now, you have got a paper and pen? Draw a circle on it, big circle. Once you have drawn the circle, tell me that you have drawn the circle. Circle is drawn. Just divide it into 3 sections. Each section will be 33.3%. In total it will be 99.9%. So virtually 100%. Yeah? Now in one triangle of the section, and I'm telling you the technique is very, very simple. You will never forget it once you have gone through it. One triangle, just put it down words full control. One section, put it down no control. And the third triangle, put it down partial control. Bear in mind, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. This is a problem, how to make our children obedient. That's the problem. Now tell me, what is in your control as a parent to make your children obedient? Principle is very simple. For every problem, you need to pick it individually, separate it from other problems. Too much traffic in mind will only cause a roadblock. So tell me what is in your control.
Teaching it? Giving instructions?
Yes, your own behavior. You are the biggest example for your children. If you're going to be loud in the house, children are going to be loud in the house. If you're going to create a loving environment, children will know that the household needs a loving environment, so you will pass it on to generations. a psychiatrist, psychotherapist called Anthony Starr in somewhere in 1970s or something. In 1980s, he wrote an article which is a landmark article called Ghost from the Past. And this is basically the way we replicate our upbringing onto our children. Happens all the time. So the things which are in our control in making our children obedient is the most important thing is my own behavior. My simple example is, if I give importance to my prayers, trust you me, my children will. I give an example of my personal life. When my boy was little, we went on a holiday and he liked some French-made yogurt, which was not available in the UK. So we started importing them. I thought, okay, my boy likes it, let's get it wherever we get it. We start getting for him. Now, similar yogurt is available in the supermarket in Britain, but it's not the same. So, there was one time when we could not secure the supply. So we didn't have the yogurt. So I said to my wife that let's buy the one which we have got locally, pour it into the one same pot, and Haris will have it. He might not notice that. You know what my wife said? My boy was 3 years old. My wife said, if we do it today, don't expect him not to be devious in the future. So, these little things do matter. We all know the concept of halal. This morning I was speaking to my brother and we talked about, there was an issue of someone who was not very honest with some financial situation. And my brother said to me that the father of the children never differentiate between halal and haram. Why do you expect the son would not do the same? So things which are in our control, the first thing is ourselves, our behavior. What else can be in our control?
Good question, sir.
Yeah.
I don't know, how do you explain somebody who's a practicing Muslim, but his son is rebellious?
Size of the?
The son is rebellious. I mean, I know people who are
Yeah.
Muslims, right?
It's a very common issue.
But the son's out drinking. I've seen it so many times.
Yes.
So then there's a complete contradiction, right?
Yeah. Let me finish the process.
Okay.
And you will see your answer is somewhere in our conversation.
All right.
Yeah? The thing is, what else is in our control when we are dealing with a rebellious teenager? One is our own behavior. Yeah? We can, as parents, we can create the right environment in the house. Yeah? What else?
Controlling their behaviour. Controlling their behaviour.
That is where the issue is. There's a whole issue of control. Like for example, I was asked to go go for this training. So I went for this training of child protection. Yeah? And sometimes there were live and discussions and people are invited. So there was a mother whose young son was trapped by a pedophile who eventually murdered him. So the mother ended in English, quite standard English family, ended in creating a charity in her son's name. Yeah? Now, parents were trying to stop it. And the son was going further away the more they were trying to stop it. So I raised my hand, I stood up, and I said, listen, sometimes parents, they try to act in the best interest of the children, but they eventually ended in pushing them away. And I gave a very interesting example. When you try to clean your ear, the wax in your ear, with a little plastic, with a stick, you instead of getting the wax out, you are pushing the wax in. And that's exactly what happens sometimes. We don't tend to appraise the whole situation, we like to control it. And there are strategies which needs to be used. When I was in child and adult psychiatry, I still do a bit of it, but not huge. A lot of times parents believe and felt that they are under treatment instead of their child. And the reason was very simple. If you want to fix a problem with the child, you need to work with the parents. The biggest responsibility a parent can discharge is to raise the children. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the best thing father can give to their children is education and training. And there's a reason for that. It's a more difficult thing. Education, you can buy education. It's no problem at all. You can throw money and get the best teachers to get the education, reading, writing and all those things. It's the training bit which is the most difficult. You know how many families come to me? It's a quite interesting thing. How many families come to me who actually are at the top end of the scale? I had the pleasure of going and seeing individuals in houses where only the driveway is over a mile from the gate to the door. You won't believe it. The issue is, when the time is there to invest in your children, we are generally after investing in ourselves. We believe we are doing this for our family and for our children, but in a sense, we are just satisfying our own needs and our own achievements. Investing in a relationship with children is a thing from the very start. Sometimes I ask my young patients that, how many times you put on your dad's clothes? They put on their mother's clothes all the time, I know that. There are very few children who actually put on their dad's clothes. I ask strange questions when I see somebody. Because it's a question of relationship. And the balance of the household. I was sitting in this multidisciplinary team meeting which we quite often do in mental health. And I was dealing with a family, and this young lady who happened to take almost all the drugs under the sun wanted to leave the meeting to go out to have a cigarette. And at the same time, she said that I can't really smoke anymore. I can't really, my chest is so full of smoke, I can't really smoke anymore. And she's a young good looking lady, about a young girl actually, 20s or something. Her mother was sitting there, father was sitting there. So mother said, why do you smoke then? She said, do you remember leaving me locked in the house, going in the back garden to have a smoke because I was giving you too much stress? You have no right to stop me from smoking. I witnessed that conversation. So the first principle is don't expect your children to do anything else. If they have noticed you doing something, they'll do it. So first thing what we can do is to change ourselves. Yeah? And children will appreciate that. What else can we do when we are dealing with a rebellious teenager? Is there anything? Yes, please? Yes, but now I want to just draw your attention towards positive and negative reinforcements and punishment. In parts of the world, punishment is allowed. In Britain, punishment is not allowed. We can't even use the word. What is the difference and what's the principle? Punishment is, you do something and it coincides with the negative consequences and the expectation is to stop that behavior. Yeah? That is punishment. It's not allowed. What we are allowed to do in raising our children is positive and negative reinforcements. Reinforcement theory is very much established in mental health now, for many years now, decades. What is positive reinforcement? Positive reinforcement is that you achieve good results and you tell me what I should do for you as a parent. Now when it comes to this question, you asking your child what would they like to be done, it is their priority, not yours. Because you might see that your child would enjoy more going on a holidays for fortnight somewhere interesting place, and your child might only want a push bike. So give them the first opportunity that it's a kind of bargain. I want you to do good studies and produce these results. At the end of it, once you have done that, I will do something for you, what you would like me to do for you, not what you think is right for them. There's a big difference. If you start acknowledging people what they like you to do for them, instead of what you believe you should be doing for them, life will change. People will acknowledge you better. Yeah? So that's positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is, if you do not do your homework, you are not allowed to watch television or play your computer game. Basically, you are taking a pleasure away subject to the behavior you want to increase. You want the school homework behavior to increase. You take the pleasure away and give that pleasure back subject to that the child has kept his bargain. That is negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, results first, pleasure afterwards, but of your choice. And that's what the strategies we use in child development and modification, behavior modification. Simple and easy to do. It's just a mindset how you look at it. Yeah. So coming back to your question, is basically asking somebody, giving them an opportunity, what would you like to do? Secondly, when you said about rebellious young people, my understanding is that we don't understand ourselves. And we hardly bother understanding anybody around us. We end in spending lives with people not knowing who these people are. When I talk to people, generally I have a pleasure to spend as much time with individuals as I like. So sometimes I end up spending an hour and a half with somebody talking about certain things, because that's I enjoy talking about, knowing people. Sometimes I ask them, describe your wife or your spouse or your husband in 3 words. They struggle to find 3 words to describe this person they decide to spend life with. Sometimes I ask them actually, describe yourself in 3 words. One day I'm going to write about all these interesting things that I do actually. I call it a game of 3. That means I say that, listen, describe yourself in 3 words. Describe your loved one in 3 words. And then I said to them, if I ask, generally in a family setting, your mom to describe you, what do you think the words your mom would use for you? Or your dad will use for you? And once you put all those words on a paper, everything just opens up in front of you what's happening in a household. It's just untying the relationships. We don't know ourselves enough. We don't know our loved ones enough. When we go out for shopping, wherever we go for our shopping, we don't just walk in and pick the very first thing we see. Or we just don't buy things which don't fit us, or we don't suit us, or we don't see ourselves nice in wearing those things. No, we don't. We go from shop to shop finding the something which is right for us. Don't we do that? But when it comes to human beings, we don't make that effort. We tend to take them for granted. Even the most loved ones, we take them for granted. And I think that is where the problem starts. Then there is a huge issue of neurodiversity, which is still, and my heart cries on it. And I've been saying it, a number of times I've said that. If I have resources, one day I will take NHS to the court on providing bad service to neurodiverse individuals, which includes ADHD and ASD primarily. Children in school remains undiagnosed, uncared for, with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder or autistic spectrum conditions, the lifestyle choices. They struggle. They never achieve their full potential. They are not understood by their parents, not understood by their teachers, not understood by the system. They feel excluded, cut off. And what happens eventually? Everybody tends to tick boxes, and we expect the same from everyone, knowing the fact that every individual is different. No two people are the same. But we expect them. The other issue is when we try to fit our mental formulas on others. Let them find their own formulas. Let them come up with their own natural formulas, which is right for them. So one thing is, this we can do. Now let's move on what we cannot do. We have established two things that we can, which are very relevant actually. We can change ourselves, present ourselves well. We acquire better understanding of the individuals who want to change their behavior. We can use some strategies, positive or negative reinforcement, to engage them with the process, make them feel connected. Yeah? There are things which we cannot do. Are there anything we cannot do at all?
We cannot punish them.
We can't punish them. We can't put them to jail for doing anything, which is technically legal in the country. Yeah? Then, we can't change them. It is beyond our means. If we do our job right, and after that, if someone still wants to opt for their own choices, all we can do is to pray for them. We can't change that. There are individuals who actually are so much fixed their own lifestyles and the priorities, even the best arguments in the world or best strategies don't work.
But isn't, Doctor, their choices is actually our choices when they were young and little? We engrave, in fact, their choices.
That's true.
So it's not really their choices. If we did our job properly,
we wouldn't have got into this problem.
Yeah, we got into the problem.
Yes.
So their choices really is our choice.
Yes. Secondly,
Can you repeat that so that everybody can?
What happened is, the discussion is that if what we believe the next generation's choices are basically not their choices in true sense. It is what we have engraved to start with. We set their direction of travel, and that's where they continue thinking about on those lines.
Including, if we didn't engrave nothing when we had the opportunity when they were young, that means whatever they end up choosing will be our fault because we chose that indirectly.
Yes, that directly and indirectly.
So because sometimes the parents don't choose the right thing for their children when they had the opportunity.
Yes.
And then because I work with the community quite a lot, and I get a lot of children, parents who are coming and say, look, my son, he used to pray when he was little, he used to go to the mosque.
Exactly.
When he becomes 17, 16, now he's not. Why? Because there's something wrong parents did when they were young. That is it. That's what, because the actual choice of the child is the parent's choice. You can ask parents who have obedient children that their children are obedient because they engraved certain things, certain principles in them when they had the opportunity. And our Deen, he gave us this teaching from Ali radiallahu anhu, the fourth caliph, when he said that when it comes to education, he says for the first 7 years, love your children. Make them love them. Make them love you. Make them be attached to you. And then in the second 7 years, he said, first 7 years don't teach them. Make them love you only. And then in the second 7 years, then you start.
Good point, but ladies can't hear.
Yeah. Very quickly I want to repeat. What's being said is that basically invest in your children to get the results. Whatever the choices your children make is basically your direct and indirect choices which you have led on to them to make. But on the other hand, if you have done your job right and your next generation is making wrong choices which you feel you have no control over, just keep your faith. They are going to come back. Because this leads to another discussion, another topic, that every few years we sign a different contract with life. We change. Every few years we change. What I used to do in my 20s, I didn't do it in my 30s. What I did in my 30s, I didn't do it in my 40s. What I did in my 40s, I'm not doing it in my 50s. So, it all changed with time. If the child is raised in a stable environment, with good parenting, might go off the rails for a few years. Mind you, Allah allows that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows that. The door for forgiveness is the largest and the biggest door. Yeah? So if Allah allows us to sometimes go off the rails and come back, who are we to control people? They will come back. That's what I believe. Yeah. Now, so what is not in our control in that triangle which we are talking about is impose something. Impose and expect other person to change. You can only change one person in this world, your own self. You cannot change anybody else. So you cannot impose and expect change. Now, which is the third triangle? Which is partial control. What do you think partial control should have? We know we have established full control, where you got to do what you got to do. If you don't do those bits which are in your 100% control, yeah? If you go home and shout at your 20 years old son, he is going to shout back. That's it, simple, is it? You know what I mean? You don't need mathematics in it at all. So, you do, if you don't do what is in your 100% control, then you can only blame yourself. If you go to bed with smelly hands and you are bitten by an insect, you can only blame yourself. If you leave your camel outside, untied, and camel run away, you can only blame yourself. It's as simple as it is. Rasulullah has already given us all these examples. Yeah? We see it differently. We see it now differently because the time has changed. But the core of that example is the same. If you look at the essence is the same. So you do what you can do. Then don't waste your energies on something which you cannot do. Things which are not in your control are not in your control. You cannot look at two different directions at the same time. You cannot walk in two directions at the same time. You cannot breathe while you are swallowing. It is human. So what we have covered up till now is, in any problem, separate them. Pick one. And divide that one problem every every problem has three parts. Every problem has three parts. Not four, not five, only three parts. Something which is in your total control, something which is not in your control. You cannot do anything about it. But there are things you can influence. That is where the partial control comes. So as a matter of fact, do what you can do. Don't waste your energies on things which you cannot do. Focus on partial control, things that you can influence. Now again coming back to that question, rebellious adolescent. How can you influence things which you expect to change? Are there any things in this situation which can be influenced?
The environment of the child, or
Yeah.
his friends, who he hangs with, what he watches, what he listens to, all these factors which affect the
Quite rightly, you can influence in a way that you start investing in your children, even if you have not invested in the past. You might consider reprioritizing your own life in a sense which gives more time to the children. I say sometimes to my patients that if you don't talk to your children, then you will have to pay me to talk to them. Because that's exactly what happens. They run around, psychiatrists and psychologists, to talk to them because parents don't communicate with them. There is no relationship, there is no investment. Now, and sometimes I must say, damage is beyond repair. There was a gentleman who owned quite a few care homes and money is not an issue. His son has major drug problem. And he was living in a half-built garage with a prostitute. That's how the situation was brought to me. Anyway, the man called my wife, interestingly, and said to her, "You tell me the figure, I'm happy to write on the check for Dr. Hashmi to fix my son." I said, "The damage is beyond repair, my friend. You can write whatever figure for yourself, I don't need it. Alhamdulillah. But here the damage is beyond repair." Sometimes damage is beyond repair. And you have to acknowledge and recognize that. And move on to life.
Is his family Muslim or non-Muslim?
I don't think they were Muslims, no.
Okay.
No.
That it would be different.
They're different. But I think the main issue wasn't what was apparent at the time the problem brought to the attention. Basically the time when the parents had to invest with children, they were building the family fortune. This is the most, oh yes sir.
Just one question. You talked about damage beyond repair, right? But as parents, loved ones, you just can't let go of things.
You can't.
You can't, right? So I'm sure there must be a way to still manage and influence, right? You can't just throw it out.
Yes, there was a management with this situation, But that management wasn't acceptable to anybody. The first step was the father was giving quite a large excess of funds to the son. And I said to father, you got to stop that. He couldn't fail at the first step. You give money to somebody who is going to buy street drugs and live with these circumstances. You are just encouraging and reinforcing the situation. How are you going to expect any change?
They might beg, borrow, steal.
Yes, then I think in those situations you've got to involve the right authorities. One of the problems is that sometimes we protect our children so much that we do not let them face the consequences. We do not let them to experience the negative consequences of their behavior.
Yeah, but there's a danger in that, letting them experience. There is certain things we can let our children experience, but we should not give them carte blanche to experience whatever they want, because certain experiences will.
No, I'm not saying certain experiences. What I'm saying is that what they are saying is that basically beg, borrow and steal. If somebody goes to that extent, then there is a law of the land which needs to be invoked. So if somebody commits a crime, instead of protecting them because it's your loved ones, you let the person go through the system as well. So that the person learns that if you do that, you will have these consequences. Now, okay, what you can do, things you can influence, partial control. And those things are you can influence. Identify those things. And then influence them. You will never be successful 100% to influence the things which are in your partial control. But you might be able to achieve 50% control due to use the partial control stuff. Things which you can influence and bring change, you are very successful if you manage to achieve half of the control on those things. So bring some change because of your intervention, but don't expect 100% will change. You will never, the thing which you identify in your partial control section, half of them might fall in no control and some of them will fall in full control. So technically, the circle will end in dividing into half. Half is something which is in your control and half which is not in your control. As a human being, achieving 50% control on any situation is the maximum use of your abilities. Human beings cannot achieve anything more than 50% control of any situation. We are just not designed for that. When we try to control everything and we try to move further than 50, all we'll get is disappointment. We just get a slap in our face. It's setting yourself for a failure to start with. It's just expecting your car to actually drive more than the speed it is designed for. It's not designed for more than that. As a human being, 50%, any situation in your life, you pick the problem, pick the situation, use this process of drawing a circle, dividing into 3, 33%, total 99.99%, virtually 100%. A section for full control, things you can influence and bring change in your life. You can only guarantee change in yourself, you cannot guarantee change in somebody else. Yeah? Things which you cannot do anything about, make a list of those things. They are beyond your control, you cannot do anything about it. And in between, There is a bulk of stuff which you can influence, which is in your partial control. Focus your energies on partial control, and you are successful in bringing half of it into your full control. And that's your maximum achievement as a human being. You can't do any more than that. But before doing that, you've got to separate problems in your mind. Don't let your mind turn into M25. Otherwise, we are inviting a chock-a-block, roadblocks, very slow traffic.
So what do you mean by separate the problem in your mind?
What happens is every problem comes from a nature. Every problem has a natural aim. There are only three types of problems in our life. Only three types of problems we get. Biological, which are related to our body. Yeah. Psychological, related to our mind. Social, related to with everything else. That's why in mental health, the model always we use is biopsychosocial. That is a good model which has been used for many years, for decades in mental health, is biopsychosocial. Because these are the only three things which covers everything in life. The biology, the psychology, and our sociology element of it, the social element. So problems can only come from these three sources, no fourth source. So once you've identified the source of the problem, then it's easier to travel and track down the basis of it and separate it. Like a problem with your boss at work should not affect your relationship with your wife. It does quite often. If you have a bad day, your home doesn't deserve that your bad day. This actually is just overlapping of problems in life actually cause problems. And we try to resolve issue, and we end in making it more complex in our mind because we end in thinking several things at the same time which doesn't lead to any destination. So separate problems as a first step and then apply this strategy, and I'm hoping that you will get the desired results. But if you're interested in any specific topic, please do let me know. I'm happy to. I just live up the road, so I'm happy to come here and talk about any topic which is of interest. Anything is psychiatry. Psychiatry is my passion. I love my job. So anything you would like to, I would love to come and talk about it.
Yeah, next time prepare something about leadership.
Yeah, leadership. Otherwise, I was personally thinking that I will come with information overload. That is something I'm very passionate about as well.
But given the audience, given the community, Muslim community, it will be helpful if it's done from both perspectives, from the Islamic perspective and from non-Islamic perspective. Because that way we will have that way you will have
both aspects of it.
And will be much more helpful. Because certain perspective, if it's not Islamic, then it will be difficult to implement anything at all.
Muslim mental health, which I have a bit of an interest in, has its own specifics.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most people who are working in Muslim mental health concept, they have not come up with something more significant or substantial. When Muslims, their mental health, their needs, their expression of mental disorders, and the way they manage it one needs to understand the context of it before doing anything. It's not all about medication.
Of course, yes.
It's not all about standard psychological therapies
We
which are on an offer.
have our Muslim education.
Yeah.
It's proven to be
So, Muslim mental health is an entirely different world.
yes.
Any questions before we finish?
So shall we bring it to a close?
Yeah, I need to make a few announcements, inshallah. So you want to close out your bit?
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.